Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Automation Sports City Car Challenge. I'm sorry it's taken so long, but yeah, I was not prepared for the 49 cars at all. But yeah, it's finally here. And yeah, let's just get on with it. So first car is the Nishi City Cross STR by Red. Lap time it set was a 1:35.134, and I changed the scoring system slightly for rating how the car drives. Don't mind it losing the splitter there. Yeah, so I'm now rating these cars on, I'm just rounding to the nearest 10 for every car just to save some time in comparing it. Don't think it really affects scores that much. Yeah, so rather than everything being all relative to each other, I decided to just give a car a score of 1, 10, 20, 30, 40 or 50. And this car got a 50 because honestly I can't fault it in any way. It's really nice handling, to be honest. It's not too understeery or anything. It's got some decent straight line performance. I wouldn't call it anything insane, but it's not painfully slow or anything, so it gets going well. It deals with the curbs fine. It yeah, softens them out, isn't thrown about by bumps too much, and generally just gets stopped and turned around yeah, just very well. So yeah, gets the full 50 points for that. And yeah, there we go, and into all. Next, from Racer, we have the Showboat Turbo. Don't mind me, just getting the document up. Yeah, this set a 1:38.031. General felt quite quick. It was, yeah, some pretty good straight line performance, at least compared to other cars I did at the beginning. Yeah, I did this a while ago now, but still, yeah, no, it's got some good straight line performance. It is rear engine. You can sort of see me spin it in a bit there. Yeah, you can see it sort of bottoming out a bit on the bumps, but overall it didn't actually cause any issues. It being a lower car and not a crossover, that didn't really affect it at all. The suspension was fine and soft. I gave it a 30, mainly because it wasn't quite as stable as I would have liked it to have been. There were a couple of times where I just sort of felt, I think it's just to do with it being rear engine. It's still a very nice handling car, but I think, yeah, just the lack of, so you can see there the way the back sort of steps out a bit, but it's got good grip accelerating at least. But yeah, just that sort of lack of stability and the fact that it is easy to lose if you're not paying total attention, yeah, it brings it down a bit. But yeah, otherwise it is a very good handling car. Again, you can see it stepping out a bit there. Yeah, it's just, yeah, just otherwise, oh, there we go. That was almost a drift tap. And into the wall. That's going to happen a lot. Next, from the almighty Twingo, is the Major Tokyo. Still not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah, a little K-car sort of thing. I only gave this a 20 out of the 50 points available. Basically the fact that it was so tall and had rather stiff suspension. I did manage to roll it a couple times, just clipping the curbs. And yeah, that rear bumper's doing some weird things. But yeah, I think might have a bit too much power for its own good. Just sort of lots of on-throttle understeer, couldn't really push in the way that I would like to. But a couple of good things it did, having an automatic gearbox. To be honest, all the cars have, or most of the cars have such short gear ratios that having a manual, there's not really too much of an advantage there. So it is sort of nice just being able to concentrate on braking and turning, and being able to cover both pedals with both my feet does help a lot. So yeah, and The time it set was a 1:33.984. Oh, getting sideways a bit there. I did use the handbrake a couple times getting into these turns, but yeah, it did help a bit. But here we go, final corner and across the finish line. I really should have put like a bollard or something there to show it, but yeah, there we go. And I think I just stalled it there. As I'd like line it up for the next run. Yeah, that was smart of me. Yeah, I ended up not using the actual time trial mode and just create the checkpoints just to save some time, like cutting things. But yeah, I went round it that time. It was a bit sort of understeery, I suppose, trying to get it turned in, and yeah, just sort of I found it a bit easy to go around. I don't think it was really any slower or going inside the next side, mainly because I was sort of braking for the same point every single time. But yeah, you can sort of see it was set up a bit too stiff, so it sort of got chucked up into the air before it went into the stairs. I just completely, yeah, the track limits wasn't an issue for me here. Yeah, it is sort of fairly controllable, does go where you point it, but you can see how much understeer there is. Just trying to get it turned in. I sort of wonder if the front brakes are too powerful. Just sort of if it had a bit more rear bias. You can see me there pulling the handbrake, trying to pull it in a bit, but yeah. Just sort of if I was on the brakes, it just wanted to plough on in a straight line. Maybe the weight distribution's too far forward. But I feel like having some stronger rear brakes or something would help it turn in a bit better. So anyway, I gave it a 20 out of the 50 points, just for being sort of so understeery and losing so much time, but it was otherwise fairly nice to drive, and it set a time of 1:34.922. So yeah, there we go. From Cookie Monster, we have the City Cookie, which camera, there we go. I'm just moving around with my mouse then. I thought it was going to like auto center instead of go into chase cam, but there we go. Yeah, anyway, it typical rear wheel drive sports car sort of layout. It was fairly easy to drive, although you could see it's a bit low there and got thrown up by the bumps or the curb there going into the alley. And again there, just sort of launched up into the air as I turn in and have to use the wall there. But yeah, when the road was flat, this thing was fantastic to drive. Yeah, just very good handling, very balanced. Sort of, it had some issues where sometimes like you would oversteer a bit, but be a bit too oversteer. You could see I got a twitch there on the bumps there. But yeah, I think that's sort of expected really for a sort of very lightweight sports car. Overall, yeah, just very good braking, quite stable, but yeah, it did feel like I'd have to back off on the throttle when there was just even sort of little elevation changes, like here, just these little hills here was enough to offset it, and almost overshot it there. That staircase on the right there as you turn in, the amount of times I hit this car on that was, yeah, painful. It gave it a score of 30, and it's had a time 1:33.547. I totally didn't forget to say that before the end. From El Bruno, the Marquez Microsport. Set a time of 1:30.351, and I gave it a score of 20. Gonna get out of the way this time at the beginning. There we go. Anyway, yeah. So pretty decent time. This was a very quick car in a straight line, and it had quite a lot of grip overall. So you could see there, very low and stiff. Bumps really caused some issues for it, as you can see by the fact that I completely lost the front splitter there. So yeah, it was sort of chucked about a bit. I think going through that sort of little park area, I hit the trees quite a few times in this car. But yeah, lots of straight line speed, and decent enough braking. It had some, it had quite a lot of grip, and got turned in fairly well. I mean, it's a high-powered front-wheel drive car. I believe it's front-wheel drive, yeah. I think it's front-wheel drive longitudinal. I really hope I'm remembering that right there. But yeah, lots of straight line performance, but just sort of lacking in terms of being able to push this around the city comfortably, just because of how stiff it is. You sort of have to either back off or get lucky. Yeah, otherwise, you know, handled fairly well. I'm taking it a bit wide there, and yeah, there we go. From MadCat, the Saito Metropole Turbo. So lap time of 1:36.157. So actually, surprisingly not too far off. I mean, considering the age of it, I know it's still got relatively comparable performance, but the fact that it's quite a bit older does sort of surprise me. It's saying such good times. But yeah, 1:36.157, and I gave it a score of 30. Yeah, overall, pretty decent. You can see I sort of slow down a bit much there, just because I'm a bit worried about it with it not having ABS and all, not to overbrake, although I do that with every car to make sure I set a decent time. But yeah, it's yeah, certainly maybe a bit more loose than others. Did make it quite fun. The fact that it did feel sort of slidey. I did manage to lose the back of it a couple times. I think just the fact that it didn't have much power, you can see it took quite a bit of curb there. Flip it up on two wheels, which is weird actually, because otherwise the stiff suspension didn't really notice it too much. Like, I mean, it landed fine and went straight there, although maybe it was a bit underpowered and a bit slower than some of the really fast cars, which meant that stiff suspension wasn't so much of an issue. Yeah, did feel like maybe it could use a differential as well to help control the rear through when putting down power out of corners. But yeah, otherwise I think quite a fun car to drive. From PJ Cragsford, the IR Trento X, or Cross I suppose. Yeah, set lap time of 1:38.203, and I gave it a rating of 10. I didn't find this car very fun to drive, or particularly easy to drive, so yeah, it only gets 10. It wasn't the worst though. Yeah, anyway, you can sort of see the way that it's bouncing and pitching and wobbling there. Under braking, this car was rather tricky. You had to make sure that you braked only in a straight line and that you were going dead straight when you pressed the pedal. Otherwise you'd spin out to lose control. So yeah, that was the thing. Just, it felt like it was tripoding a bit through corners. I think actually you saw it the first time that I braked hard for the stairs. You could sort of see the way that it was wobbling about. And again, you can just sort of see that it's like sort of lurching backwards and forwards a bit under braking. I know maybe it's not super obvious. Probably more obvious from bonnet camera, which is what I used for this. But yeah, I think it was just set up a bit too soft. The fact that it had solid axle rear suspension could have also contributed a bit, but I don't know, I think it's more to do with suspension tuning than anything else. Straight line performance, it was fine. I mean, you can hear how high it revs as well. It was over 9,000 RPM, and I don't think it has any mufflers. Might be wrong on that, but yeah. It was alright in a straight line performance at least. From Stella Gale, the Thunderbolt CF4S. And yeah, we are going there. Don't know why I sat there for so long, but there we go. Yeah, you can tell from that launch it's all-wheel drive. There's a decent amount of power. But yeah, lots of power, good straight line speed. So lap time of 1:33.062. Yeah, and I gave it a rating of 30. It had a lot of grip. It was pretty easy to throw around. I didn't really have to think too hard about driving it. You can see there a bit of understeer, all-wheel drive car, obviously, and I think the engine was fairly heavy, being a boxer 4 and everything. Yeah, it sort of, yeah, really just sort of struggled to get it in at a couple of points. In high gears, it just didn't really pull at all. You can see sort of how much I had to slow down there. Maybe with a bit of handbrake I could have got on it rained, but I'm not so good at handbrake turns, so that's sort of a less consistent strategy. But yeah, in higher gears this thing had very sort of poor pull. I think just it being Boxer 4 turbo, the amount of turbo lag it had, meant that it struggled, because it, like, you change up a gear, you go out the power band. But in these sort of low speed bits, I got quite close to that staircase there. Yeah, I had some decent enough acceleration because I could just keep it at a higher RPM and the turbo spooled up. Because I had a good 320 horsepower, I think. But yeah, there we go. From Zac E65, the Koiro Musari SEL. Yeah, it's at a lap time of 1:41.406. I was sort of surprised at how slow it was. I think it just lacks straight line speed. It's just a lack of power. Maybe the gear ratios are a bit too eco-focused. I'm not too sure, I can't remember about that now. You can see it did get launched a bit going there, and I did almost have a moment there. Okay. Yeah, anyway, yeah. That, yeah, it did shock me a bit at how slow it was. Like, I know, not the most consistent driver, as you just saw there going down the steps, but yeah, I think it just sort of lacks straight line speed, and maybe even I was a bit sort of surprised at how late I could brake because of how slow I was going. But yeah, I think just it lacking some performance. Just, yeah, really, just more power would help, because it was it had pretty decent brakes, although again, might just be because I was going a lot slower than most other cars. And it did sort of, it got turned in fairly well. There was a bit of understeer, but yeah, I suppose thinking about it now, maybe the reason I liked it, although yeah, there maybe a bit of a dodgy entry as well. But yeah, I just think that yeah, just all to do with performance. Next, from Prince of All Saiyans, the Saiyan Pride. This was surprising. It's something like 400 horsepower on 155 tyres all around. I think it's all-wheel drive. But I didn't expect this to be so easy to drive. And like, it wasn't like it was full of turbo lag or anything. It's a decent power. It's a lap time of 1:33.062. And I gave it a score of 30 for drivability, because yeah, it was surprisingly easy. The brakes just weren't up to the task of stopping it though. I think it's all to do with the tyres, but you can see sort of the amount I'm locking it up, and I think if it had some nice wider tyres, it's a good thing that it's light. But yeah, I mean, even though, you know, it's got all the weight at the front because it's a pickup, there's nothing back there, it still wasn't really too bad. Sure to get in there, but yeah, got some really good acceleration actually. Just more that it lacked sort of mechanical grip to give me confidence to really push it. That's what held it back there. Also, yeah, I do like how much it pitches about. Oh, I got some airtime there. That was a bit, I'm amazed I held that, to be honest. I'm usually not that good. But yeah. Just these final couple turns. And yeah, I suppose it being so small was another good thing. But yeah, surprising entry. And of course I have to hit it somewhere. From Yeshua Man 1983, the Owens V2 Taru Tomo, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which, it's I think there was an issue when it exported, or an update or something sort of broke the styling at the back of this, which is why it looks like that. But yeah, big truck surprisingly wasn't too tricky to get into the alley. Set time of 139.453, and I gave it a score of 20 for how it drives. It was, yeah, it's a big truck, it's a bit sort of difficult to judge spaces. Yeah, the other big thing, it being a truck, bad aerodynamics and lots of weight meant that beyond 60 mile an hour there was no pull. So down some of the longer straights like there, you've gone to say 4th gear and there was just nothing, while most other cars would keep going for another 10-20 miles an hour more. So yeah, shifting into 3rd gear even, you could like feel how much it lost. One thing that did surprise me was the brakes on this, to be honest. It like, it's what, 1,800 kilograms, I think, and I think it's got some wide-ish tyres for what it is, and I think they are sports compound, but yeah, the fact that it did get stopped how it did really did surprise me. You can see there, I sort of run the edges of the track, but yeah, I suppose it does help that it has push rod rear suspension, probably makes it a bit nice to drive, but yeah, there we go. From Yang X2, the Wong Do CV Allure Sport. Yeah, I assume a Chinese sort of name. Anyway, yeah, set a lap time of 1:30.250, and I gave it a score of 40 for the way it drove. Very good acceleration. Yeah, you can see it getting launched there. Yeah, very stable, very sort of drivable. The only issue is, yeah, it's a little low, but the fact that it had so much control meant I could keep it in the right direction, and it was very satisfying for most of the time to drive. Yeah, I think if it was just a bit taller and softer, which sort of would make sense with like the spare tyre and things, sort of going for like a slightly crossover sort of aesthetic. Yeah, I don't know. Would have made sense to me. It had a automatic gearbox too, which was quite nice. It's a bit weird to say that you want an automatic gearbox, but really for hot lapping you sort of do. Just because there's no point in thinking about it, because you're going through the gears the same way anyway. Don't get me wrong, a manual's much more fun to drive just for yourself. When you're trying to set consistent times, yeah, I don't know. I like an auto for this sort of thing. But yeah, it was overall very easy to drive and fairly quick. From Zephie, the Kuma RC9 Turbo, set time of 1:32.984, and I gave it a score of 40. Ignore the sort of slightly dodgy export. The way it looks isn't exactly how it was given to me in game, but I think an update and stuff sort of messed with it a bit. Yeah, well, that's my explanation for the red trim and stuff. Yeah, so I get launched a bit there, but it went in a straight line. First mid-engine car, and I'll be honest, the moment I started driving it, I had a grin on my face. Just the way it launched, I'm sort of a sucker for mid-engine cars to begin with. I think a good setup mid-engine car is more satisfying than anything else. But yeah, I think the fact this was so light, you can see me getting a bit nervous there. Yeah, was made it very fun. It was maybe a little sketchy over the bumps, but you can see, like, sort of as I was going through the park section, it sort of was so stable it just sort of goes in a straight line anyway. I think it has a lot more grip than it feels like. It's just sort of tuned to be very oversteery. I did lose it quite a few times actually going into the alley. But yeah, overall I'd say very fun car as we come into the final section. Bit of oversteer, take a bit of the hedge with us. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know, it had some issues with the bumps, but I kind of want to drive it more, if that makes sense. From Lava Cake, the Tricky TZ, set a lap time of 1:34.531, and I gave it a score of 30. It's easy enough to control. The steering was surprisingly heavy on it. Yeah, I wasn't really expecting that. I suppose maybe it's front heavy. Not sure what power steering it has, but maybe that has something to do with it. Might have none, actually. I'm not too sure about that. As you can see there, it deals with the bumps rather well. Sort of, yeah, good ride height overall. Although I do lose the front splitter a bit there, coming down the stairs. But yeah. Yeah, really, that was the biggest strength of this car. It dealt with the bumps really well. Yeah, it's turned in fairly well. You can see it's more towards the understeery side. So dragging wide as I accelerate there. Although I think this is front wheel drive, so that also explains it there. But yeah, just the fact that it deals with the bumps well, and it allows me to sort of just keep on pushing. I wouldn't say the handling dynamics was anything too special, but it was just a fine car to drive. You know, just made it easy for me. So yeah, as we come into the final bit, take a wider line there because I sort of outbraked myself a bit, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah, into the final section, and yeah, cross the line. From Caligo, the Judosha Keigoka Blacko. I'm probably mispronouncing that horribly. Yeah, anyway, this set a time of 1:41.156, which, it's sort of a surprise, really. Yeah, it just, maybe a lack of acceleration, really. I don't quite remember how fast it was going everywhere, but, yeah, you can sort of see the way that it moves about there. Maybe a bit low and stiff. In fact, you can see how much time I'm losing just trying to accelerate down the stairs. It sort of bounces about there and doesn't really get moving. Yeah. Just sort of shocks me, really. Coming into here, take a bit of curb and sort of bounce around. To be honest, it isn't terrible. There are far worse cars over the curbs there. I guess it's just sort of super average and just doesn't go that quick. Might be, I can't remember. I know this car didn't have like insane amounts of power. Was it like low 100s, I think? Which is really the only way I can explain it, because I know my driving isn't the most consistent thing, but it doesn't seem you know, this still seems like a decent and comparable time. So yeah, a bit odd about that, but there we go. Coming to the final section now, and yeah, here we go. From Bowtie the Fox, the Arrow CT Sport. This was a bit shocking. You can already sort of see there the way that it sort of kicked the back out a bit there. This car felt like it had absolutely no rear end grip at all. You just sort of turned in and the back just sort of wanted to keep going around. It was really odd, which I mean, you can see there it deals with the bumps fine. I mean, it's a bit of a larger car, so you'd sort of expect that, but yeah, it wasn't anything too bad anywhere else, but you can sort of see how much I'm lifting there and slowing down just to try and make it around. You basically couldn't put the power down too early or it would just spin. Because that, I gave this car a score of 1. Yeah, in terms of handling, and it set a lap time of 1:42.266. So, yeah, really slow time. Which it's got a car. It's a car with loads of power and good performance, I think, if I remember correctly, at least. But yeah, it just sort of really lacked. Or more just I couldn't use any of that performance just because it lacked any grip coming through corners. So yeah, just sort of pushing it wasn't really an option. You can sort of just see how slow I'm having to go through, but yeah, and yeah, there we go. Next, from the Scotian Racer, Real American Auto Group Jerry. Yeah, strange styling aside, yeah, this car was also a handful to drive. I gave this a 10 because it was still at least somewhat consistent, but it just wasn't particularly fun to drive as it gets launched over the bumps. Some good air times there. But yeah, you can see there, the brakes basically just acted as a handbrake. I seem to remember them being really far, or like really biased to the rear, as in the rear brakes were way stronger than the front brakes. In fact, I'm not sure if the front brakes had enough power to lock, but yeah, it yeah, just sort of oversteered every time. The engine itself wasn't too powerful. I think it was like, you know, 130-ish horsepower, which, I mean, that's not low powered at all for this challenge, but yeah, this I know some other parts of the setup which just meant that wasn't really enough. And I mean, considering some of the cars here were pushing sort of 300 horsepower sort of levels, quite a few were over 200, and yeah, you'd sort of see why it's a bit slow. But yeah, just the brakes and everything, you could see the way that it just sort of kicks out there, and the braking, that's really where it lost all the time. I think just power wasn't too much of an issue, but there we go. From Racer 126, the Geschenk Go Hyper. This, yeah, I had some issues with the checkpoint system. I sort of, because I was using the hot lapping app in BeamNG rather than having to reload the track every single time I swapped car. Yeah, I had some issues setting it up every time I went onto the game, but so that's the only reason there was a bit of a weird starting bit there. The fact that I had a rolling start there from a different distance, and I think the start line was in a slightly different place because it was being weird, but I don't think that really affected the lap time at all, because I was still had to travel the same distance. I don't think that was really any better of a place to have the start line, but yeah, set lap time of 1:30.344, and I gave it a score of 40. It was pretty good handling, had some good straight line performance, wasn't difficult to control at all, just sort of a bit too understeery really, which, I mean, I suppose it being front wheel drive, that makes sense, but yeah, just sort of maybe could turn in a bit better. But yeah, coming into here, it was actually a very nice line. I'm impressed with myself for that. Yeah, so yeah, I suppose it still has some good front end grip, but yeah, there we go. Next, from OME, the Amala Veloce GTI. Yeah, this car set a time of 1:37.829. Again, there was a bit of a style line issue. I think I fixed that the next time. But yeah, gave this car a score of 40 as well. But as you can see, so the major issue with it, the reason it was so slow, set such a slow lap time, is just performance. You can probably see the difference between this and some of the faster cars. Just how much less straight line speed it has. Yeah. Otherwise, very easy to drive, very easy to position. I don't know how much that was down to just lack of speed. Everything's going a bit slower. But yeah, got turned in very well, and it all responded how I'd like a car to, but yeah, just sort of lacking performance and lacking just straight up speed. I think that's just the only reason that it set such a bad time. Coming down here, managed to get it turned in very well and use up all the road. And yeah, probably because it's going a good like 10 miles an hour slower than anything else. I'm not sure the margins are actually quite that big, but yeah, it well, not anything else, but some of the faster cars that also drove as well as this. But yeah, coming through the final few turns. Or actually, yeah, because start line things, that was the final turn. Yeah, that confused. Never mind. Next, from Marquez, the Lasara L2 Cross, set a time of 1:37.531, and I gave it a score of 20 for driving. This car, I believe it has hard compound tyres, which mean that it, braking performance wasn't particularly great. Either was just sort of handling. Fair bit of understeer, and I found myself just sort of clipping the outside of walls often. Just sort of trying to turn in, and just the front wasn't going where I wanted to. You can see it sort of bounces about there as I come down the steps. The gear ratios felt overly short. I had to change into 4th gear just to reach 60. And I kind of feel like they were pulled a bit too short. I think just extending them out a bit, like I'd get changing into 3rd to reach 60, but I feel like at that point you're just changing gear too much, if that makes sense. It was sort of stable to drive. It never had any issues with spinning out or anything, or really even losing control over the bumps. Sort of got kicked up a bit, but I think combined with it being quite slow in a straight line, it was never an issue really. I could at least find the limit, but you can sort of see some of the understeer there. Just sort of a lack of speed, but being also quite controllable made it alright to set a time in. From XQ90, the Kondal C300 Cross, set a time of 1:41.562, and I gave it a score of 20 for the way it drove. This just felt sort of slow, really. Didn't feel too stable either, but the thing is I was going so slowly that it never really caused an issue. Back end of it gets launched up into the air going over the bumps there. But yeah, just sort of a bit loose in the way that it drove. Can kind of see the way that it sort of slides out a bit. Doesn't seem too obvious. I did actually lose this car quite a few times going into the alleyway. I'm not quite sure why, but it just sort of seemed to disagree with going into the alleyway. Or maybe I was having a slightly off day or something. I don't know. But it's otherwise it's not too terrible to drive. There's no sort of hugely glaring flaws in it, but it's not engaging particularly. You can see the way that I sort of lost the rear there. Nor is it just like something that you could happily be able to throw anywhere and just not think about it, because I also find those sort of cars quite fun. But coming to the final section here, get turned in, bit of oversteer on initial turn in there, coming to the line, one more turn, and there we go. Now from Food Liker, the City Speed. This is, I believe, the slowest time. And if I take a quick look through the list, I think it's the slowest. Yeah. And now I've lost my place in the list. There we go, in my notes. Yeah, anyway, yeah. It's fine. We've got time to talk about it. I gave this a score of 10 for the way it drove, and it set a time of 1:51.859. This car was weird. I was not prepared for how bad it was, because I came into that corner before the stairs, and I just sort of hit the brakes, thought I'd throw it down the gears and use a bit of engine braking or whatever, and I locked the brakes and managed to stall it, because it just locked up instantly because of how weak the tyres were, which, yeah, wasn't fun to find out. But yeah, it's just sort of, there's no grip. It doesn't really like sort of want to turn in or carry corner speed. Just sort of, yeah, it's just sort of bare basic car. It was on the bright side, actually, with it being slow. It was easy to at least just get it around the course. There were no issues with me sort of, you know, just getting it to the finish line. Like quite a few cars I sort of took me ages to do, just because trying to set a clean time just was proving itself to be quite difficult. Yeah, this car, no issues at all. From Flip7144, the Callum Carbon, and you can already see the way it twitches there. Yeah, this car was far too powerful for the tyres it had, and far too light for the, well, for the power it had. I suppose it just didn't have enough grip to be controllable. So it set a time of 1:39.75, and I gave it a score of 10 for the way it drove, just because it was so loose and so easy to spin. You always had to be on it. It was definitely a track car, but without sort of track car performance. You can see the way that it's sort of wanting to spin around on me there. It has really good turn in, but just sort of the back is so loose that you just can't feel like you're putting down any of the power, which I think is part of the reason why it's had such a slow time. Yeah, right the hairpin. I'm not sure if it's noticeable how much I'm backing off here, because it's actually quite a quiet car, which sort of surprised me. But yeah, you can probably hear that there. The well, maybe not actually, if I've messed up the audio level somehow between recording sessions or something. But yeah, just the fact that I have to back off as I'm coming out of corners and wait a second to make sure that I'm not going to spin it somehow. I think I managed to lose it a couple of times just coming around that final corner. You can see that, yeah. Maybe got a bit brave on the brakes there, going into that turn, but there we go. From Alex KUC, the Sigma 010R Dynamic set a time of 1:37.562, and I gave it a score of 20 for the way it drove. It was a lot of body roll, or at least it felt like that from bonnet camera, and just sort of the way that it, so you'd turn in and it'd feel like the entire body's, the weight of the body just sort of moving over and leaning about was just sort of trying to drag you wide and things like that. I don't know. It's how it felt to me, at least. No, in fact, you could see the body roll there. Good, I wasn't imagining that. Yeah, it was just sort of, I wouldn't say it felt slow accelerating. I think it just lacked overall performance. It wasn't sort of a high-end sort of performance spec like some of the other cars, which led to that lap time. And I think just sort of that, the way it handled, just sort of, I think yeah, you can sort of see the way that it's leaning over and just not wanting to get turned in. And yeah, I think that made it lose a lot of time. Just sort of some stiffer sway bars or Not sure really if you could lower it, particularly. No, yeah, just move the camera around. In fact, you can see actually how much, if we go in this turn, you can see the way the wheel arches open up. Yeah, I think that was just so this car's one big issue. From Astronaut, the Albatross Selina Trekker. I think I'm pronouncing that right, but I don't know. Anyway, set a time of 1:31.829, and I gave it a score of 20 for the way that it drove. It had an automatic gearbox, which, as I said before, I quite like for these things. Easy, makes it consistent. Don't have to think about it too much. But yeah, just so the way that it handled wasn't particularly engaging or fun, and I don't think it dealt with elevation changes and the bumps particularly well. It was, yeah, it felt a bit nervous at times, which I think made me lose quite a bit of speed. You can sort of see the way that it's handling isn't bad, but you'll start to notice now the way the back sort of just wants to sort of step out on you. I'm not sure if this car is, I can't remember which wheels are driven now on this car, but yeah, you can see there. So the way that the back is jumping out a bit. I don't think it looks so bad because this is the complete run, which is the best one, but so the way that it wobbles and bounces about, like going over bumps and things, did make it feel a bit nervous in driving it fast. But anyway, yeah, coming around the final corner, and it was quick in the end. From Cobra Crashy, the Redo It Automotive, I don't know. Yeah, anyway, you can probably hear that just from me revving it up. Lots of turbo lag. Also, yeah, it's loud. But yeah, this car had loads of grip. I wasn't expecting it to be just so good grip. You can also see the way that it gets launched there. Yeah, this car set a time of 1:34.375, and I gave it a score of 30, just because it was so ridiculously easy to drive, but just getting it over the bumps just wasn't so easy. Just the way that it got launched. But yeah, the fact is I could just throw this car about and didn't need to think about it at all. The other big thing was turbo lag, just sort of holding it back a bit. You can sort of hear there, it takes a while to get spooled up. It has like 200 horsepower, but once you got into fourth gear, there was absolutely no pull whatsoever. It just didn't want to get moving. So yeah, that wasn't ideal really. Yeah, just sort of the turbo lag, and I think the low suspension held it back a bit. So see me throw it out the way to avoid the steps there. But yeah, it was at least nice to drive on the flat bits. But there we go. From Armour Motors, the Armour Rave. This car was sort of a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. It was, after the way that it looked, I was expecting something sort of special special driving as well, or at least fun to drive. Similar to the first car we had, actually, is what I was expecting. But no, as you can see, it deals with the bumps rather well, no trouble from that. The fact is, it was just insanely slow in a straight line. Ended up saying a time of 1:39.016, and I gave it a score of 20 for the way that it drove. Just very little in the way of straight line performance. Sort of handling and things was alright. The major draw to this was just the way that it got over the bumps with no effort or trouble at all. But yeah, it just that performance, I suppose a bit of lack of tyre grip as well, just made it a huge disappointment really, for me at least. yeah, coming through this next bit, down the bumps. Managed to get a bit sideways there. Look at me. Drift King. No. Yeah, you can sort of, well, you can't really see the lack of speeds, but yeah, just the fact is it just didn't get going in a straight line particularly. But coming to the final section there, can run the curb as much as I like thanks to that suspension. And use both sides of the road there, and across the line. From Conan, the Mitsushita WOKF. This car is the definition of too much power for a chassis. Yeah, 225 horsepower, and it really didn't sort of have the suspension components or driveline things and tyres and anything really to cope with that sort of power. It had good brakes at least. Got stopped pretty well, I'd say, considering the speed. But yeah, the speed really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to be so quick. Going into the alleyway at 90 miles an hour, I believe was one of the fastest speeds. I think at least. Yeah, I just wasn't expecting that. But yeah, lots of on-throttle understeer as well, as you'd expect. You basically couldn't start accelerating until you made sure you were absolutely around the corner and were in mostly a straight line, and as you can see, you'd lay down 2 thick tyre marks. Bounces into the air there, yeah. It was quite stiff. I can't remember if I rolled it or not. I think I did, but I forgot to write that down in my notes if I did, which was smart of me. But yeah, into the final section. Got it turned in quite nicely there, actually. And yeah, just around these final couple turns, take actually a really nice line through there. And yeah, cross line. From Wall, the L1, this car set a time of 1:41.36, and I gave it a score of 20. This was probably the most sort of I don't know, middle of the road, well, not sure middle of the road, bland to be honest, car in terms of the way it drove. I wouldn't say it was nothing sort of outstanding about it, but at the same time there was nothing horrifying to talk about. It went round. I wouldn't say there were too many issues. You can sort of see it understeers a bit there, but yeah, I wouldn't say I ever had a problem with it. It accelerated fairly well, got up to some decent speeds, stopped well. I don't think it cooked the brakes or anything. It was just sort of, yeah, I suppose looking at it now, yeah, understeer was a bit of an issue. I suppose though after the last car I drove, I was probably sort of just happy that this handled the way it did. So I lost the control a bit there. Use up all the road again. It's fine, I'm just a professional racing driver, man. This is why I'm getting a test driver next time, to be consistent, basically. Yeah, I'd say maybe it lacked a bit of tyre grip too. I can't remember what compound it is, but it didn't. I don't think it was Sport. That's fine, that's the alternate line. I definitely crossed the finish line before there though, so it didn't slow it down. But yeah, there we go. From Zephie, the Albatross Selinas. This had a time of 1:34.328, and I gave a score of 20 for the way that it drove. Yeah, a bit of lag there for some reason. Yeah, this car was odd. Definitely felt low and easy to lose control of. Yeah, the camera position I found quite odd. You can also see that way that it spun there. That was just the way that it braked. The rear brakes were way stronger than the front brakes, which made it extremely easy to lose control of if you weren't going in a dead straight line. And the amount of times like I'd be braking and trying to move over a bit to get a better entry, and I'd just lose control of the car completely. That yeah, that happened quite a few times. So yeah, you can sort of see the way that it sort of spins left, and then have to try and turn it right again. Which, yeah, was very annoying to have to deal with. And also, yeah, just the fact that it's quite stiff and low meant that getting it into the alleyway was quite hard. As we come through the high-speed section here, you can see sort of the bumps and things. This corner here caused me so many problems. But, yeah, I take it easy this time, and you can see there. I think the front brakes usually were about twice the temperature of the rears. It was, yeah, sort of ridiculous, but there we go. From Goblin 95, the Tengu Aya. This set a time of 1:30.156, and I gave a score of 40 for the way that it drove. See me sort of throw it in there a bit too quickly. Yeah, this was quite a lively and quite fun sort of hot hatch. Sort of hot hatch? No, definitely a hot hatch. Yeah, so see the way that I get it in, it being quite a small car, I sort of had the confidence to throw it into the alleyway. Losing bits of it just going off the bumps there. Goodbye tail light. Down the steps, and we lose the other one. Maybe not the best build quality, but does get going quickly, and it does have, it's just pretty easy to get in. Possibly just a bit too stiff. It just sort of going through, bouncing about a bit too much. But yeah, no, otherwise, a very good handling car. Definitely deserving the 40. And again, just sort of being on throttle, just sort of torque steer and understeer, on throttle understeer was a bit of an issue, which was supposed to be expected from having this much power. But yeah, overall, a great car. Really, just to drive and get it done. Set a really good lap time. Didn't really have too many issues other than torque steer. Really, the steering wheel kept going light every time you turn in and press the throttle, and yeah, that was a bit worrying, but yeah, otherwise good. From the Techno Vampire, the Werner Heitura CTC 16 Auto Test Special. This car, considering its age and everything, was surprisingly quick, a 1:32.953. Yeah, this car, loads of grip, handled really well. I can't remember what tyres it was. I think it was just sports compound, but it might have been semi-slicks, it being like a sort of sporty race car. For some reason, this car, when driving into the alley, just got launched. Like, the back of it would just get thrown up into the air, which is weird because all the other bumps it was pretty fine on. So I don't know what about going into the alleyway, maybe just the amount of speed carrying in. But yeah, that was a bit of an issue. Yeah, good brakes, and it handled well. I suppose it being so lightweight and good tyres. But I suppose the major drawback with this was just outright performance, outright acceleration. I just don't think it had the power, and possibly even, yeah, I'm not sure. The gearing, to be honest, felt alright. I felt fine. I don't know, but I think just it lacked power. If it was a bit faster, I think it could have been up there as one of the quickest cars here, just because it was so easy to position and everything. I don't think I had a single problem. It was very nice to drive, but just sort of lacking that power and lacking that outright performance, and getting it into the alleyway being a bit tricky, made it a bit frustrating. So yeah, there we go, cross the line. From T Pasoti, the Motif RS19, set a time of 1:42.64. You might be wondering why it was that slow. Looking at it, you can see it's a very good handling car. It's got some good acceleration. You can see it's carrying some good speed. In fact, I am just throwing it straight in, but you can see that braking hard. Yeah, this car was so low, it was actually quicker for me to just drive around the park than going straight through it. Yeah, I basically just couldn't get it up the curbs. You can see now me getting it into the stairs, and the front just sort of hits the curb and then gets launched up. This car was a nightmare to sort of deal with the curbs. So in the end I just had to drive around it because it was just quicker. Which, yeah, I think I did do a run where I just drove straight through, and it ended up being a second slower than this run. So, yeah, plus I got radiator damage and things, and it was just more consistent to go around, really. So, yeah, otherwise though, on a flat road, it was really good handling, good straight line performance. It was really nice car to drive, but I only gave it a score of 20 just because it was so frustrating to have to deal with that, and the fact is that isn't really usable to like drive through a city with all the curbs and things, at least in BeamNG. In real life you probably don't want to be hitting curbs at that speed anyway, but it's fine, this is a game. So yeah, that was just very frustrating, which is a shame because this car had loads of potential. Raise up the suspension a bit and it would have been fantastic, but there we go. From Eddie BT, the Tianjin Putao Auto Putao Pai Pao Che. Sure, I hate that name, but okay. Yeah, set a time of 1:30.969, and I gave it a score of, I've forgotten, I'm just gonna, there we go, got a score of 30. Yeah, if you click off the tab, it goes quiet. That's professional on me. Anyway, yeah, it has some good acceleration. You can probably hear how high it's revving. Also, yeah, I don't mind the bodywork. I think it's being slightly glitched. I think they were just exporting it, got a bit weird. Yeah, at the back there. But yeah, it good acceleration and handling. It being a tool crossover thing, I did almost roll it a couple times on the curbs. Just don't mind my entry into there. Yeah, so yeah, it was alright for the most part. I didn't find the curbs and things being too tricky or awful or anything, but yeah, it was just sort of easy to drive, easy to get done, and yeah, it was good for that. Having a high revving engine, I don't think I was really below 6k RPM for the most part, so yeah, that was fun. And yeah, just a easy enough run. Set a pretty quick time for its size. From Travik 125, the AAZ Wazer, and yeah, this car set a time of 1:28.578. It's very quick in a straight line. I gave it a score of 30 for the way that it drove. Yeah, just very quick in a straight line, good performance, and you can see the wide tyres there sticking out. Yeah, I gave it loads of grip, made it very easy to drive. It wasn't quite as good over the bumps as I would have liked. The fact is, going over bumps, the back of it would just get kicked up and thrown about a lot. So even though there was a lot of grip, just didn't make me quite as comfortable as I would like to have been. Still very quick though. I'm not quite sure how it was that fast. I think it was four-wheel drive, if I'm remembering correctly, and judging by where the tyre marks are coming off, I think. Yeah, so I suppose that helps, but yeah, I think that's coming off the rear wheel there, that tyre mark. Yeah, just lots of performance, but just sort of doesn't quite have the confidence going with it. But I think if it was just a bit sort of softer, maybe a bit better balanced for dealing with the bumps, I could really push it and be confident. But there we go. From Ingalls, the Alpha Spirit RSC set a time of 1:31.531, and I gave it a score of 40. Yeah, this car was very good handling. Had good straight line performance. Wasn't really too understeery or oversteer. There was a bit of understeer, but yeah, and it dealt with the bumps fine. A bit of a hop there, but yeah, it wasn't hard to control. Never really had any tricky moments with it, so yeah, I could just launch it about and set a good time. And yeah, so come down the straight, you can get good speed, brake, get it turned in. Bit of oversteer actually. Yeah, I don't know why my notes say it was a bit on the understeery side. But yeah, there we go. Yeah, overall quite controllable. Good to get it turned in, and just make it set a good time. Go a bit sideways, but the fact that it's all-wheel drive, you can just sort of point it where you need to, and it'll pull itself back in line without any issues. I always hit that. What even is that? Like a sort of the Wi-Fi setup things? I don't believe this is the fastest lap time, by the way. But yeah, so don't worry about that. But yeah, good time. From Kamikaze Fox, the Socko Albi, set time of 1:30.422. This car had fantastic straight line performance, really. For what it is, it really shocked me. But the sort of the way it handled, the rear of it felt quite unstable, which led to a few moments. It being a big SUV, lots of ground clearance and stuff, dealt with the bumps absolutely fine. Yeah, no issues really, although it did hop around there. But yeah, I just found it sort of a bit unstable at times, and yeah, sort of once you got used to it, you could sort of use it to your advantage, help it get turned in, which I suppose I managed to do quite well there, because it's not really showing. But yeah, yeah, it was good enough handling car, so I gave it a score of 40 for the way that it drove. And yeah, just using the curbs and everything to my advantage and taking shorter routes. Yeah, through this high speed section, bit of a bump there that doesn't really affect this car. Take a bit of grass, you can sort of see the way that it twists a bit under braking because I haven't properly straightened it up. But yeah, overall all fine. Coming to the final bit of oversteer, four-wheel drift sort of thing, and yeah. From EJ255, the Shinigami GTI. This car set a time of 1:35.234. Had some good acceleration, and yeah, some very good straight line performance. So that time was a bit of a surprise, but I think it all just comes down to the amount of understeer. You can see it deals with the bumps fine, braking, trying to get it turned in, and the front just doesn't want to go round at all. It just keeps on playing in a straight line, which really where I lost all my time. Just so much understeer in this car. I think it just sort of needs some more front camber or a bit less. In fact, you can sort of see really how much rear camber if I do it. You can see there's quite a lot back there, and I think that might be part of the reason why back wheel's just having way more grip than the rear. I believe this car's all-wheel drive too, so maybe the power balance is too far forward, and really just needs to be sort of pushed back a bit to help it turn in. Yeah, just something like that would really help it. You can see again just struggling to get it turned in, and because of that you can't use any of the power. So yeah, a bit problematic in that way, but yeah, all good. So there we go. From Centurion 23, the Tarangi Sigra, set time of 1:31.906, and I gave it a score of 30 for the way that it drove. It has some good acceleration and good braking, which I suppose makes sense. It's a small, lightweight car, and yeah, no problems getting it through the alley. Although you could see the way that it gets chucked about over the bumps there. Yeah, not really too many issues when going in a straight line, at least. You can actually see the back wheel, the inside wheel, sort of tripoding a bit as you turn in, just sort of lifting off. Also known as the peeing dog stance, I suppose. Yeah, it did sometimes have some issues getting it turned in, just because, again, I don't think this is the fastest lap. I did make sure to set some clean laps, but yeah, it did have some issues with like just on throttle understeer, just sort of trying to get it turned in a bit, yeah, it did make it a bit tricky at times, just sort of having to deal with the front wheels getting overwhelmed and just dragging out wide, but yeah, it was fairly easy to set a time in. From the real Emil, we have, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name, it's Ukrainian and also very complicated. Yeah, this car was a mess to drive. It's at a time of 1:34, weird freeze there. Yeah, replays in this are a bit weird. Good though, but yeah, a bit weird. And the fact that you can get lag from them, but yeah, anyway, yeah, they set a time of 1:34.016, which for a car with 400 horsepower, yeah, really not that great. Especially like it has wide tyres, and I believe they're sports compound as well. Might be wrong on that though. But yeah, lots of, well, in theory, lots of grip, but yeah, it just wasn't very set up. It felt way too soft, but it was also far too low, so it was bouncing about on the bumps and getting launched into the air. There was so much turbo lag that you just couldn't make use of that 400 horsepower most of the time. Like, it just really didn't pull out of most of the turns. So, bit of an issue there. It only got 1 point, by the way, for the way they drove. One car had to be the bottom, and I decided it was this one. Coming up to this section, it absolutely cooks the brakes. I believe the front brakes got over 600 degrees, which, fine if they're for like racing brakes and things, but no, this they started to fade over the course of the lap. But yeah, into this final section, and yeah, there we go. You could sort of see the way that it twitched there. Yeah, that just wasn't fun. From 2015 Vauxhall Viva, the Manta Toro, or Toro, I guess. Yeah, this, you can already see the way that it's sliding about here. Yeah, this car was just really low grip. It was, I think it was on hard compound tyres, which sort of explains that. But yeah, it was also, I believe, the second heaviest car, going off memory. It was something like 1,500 kilograms. I might be off on that, but I do remember this being one of the heavier cars. So yeah, that meant it just didn't stop well, didn't really turn in well, and you can see sort of bits of it where I held it there, but yeah, the back of it sort of kicks out a bit. It set a time of 1:42.921, making it one of the slowest cars. Oversteering it a bit there, and sort of catching it at the wrong time there, really. Yeah, it just sort of lacks power as well. Down the straight, you can see there's just absolutely no go to it. If it was like fast in a straight line and handled like that, I can maybe forgive it a bit because it has some straight line performance at least. But yeah, this really awkward to get around. It does at least deal with the bumps fairly well, so that's a positive, I guess. Yeah, the brakes are actually fairly easy to lock up as well. I don't believe this had ABS. I can't remember now, but I don't think it does. Might do actually, considering I don't think I locked it up. But yeah, and I gave it a score of 10 for the way that it drove. From Micomp 7, the Neko RX5 Blue Tech. This car was very fun to drive. You can see there, sort of sliding it about a bit, but it was all very controllable. Unlike the other cars where the back would sort of come around, you weren't expecting it. This car, it felt a lot more direct, I guess, is the best way of putting it. Not sure if it is the best way of putting it, but basically I felt really in control at all times. It wasn't like the back was coming around and it would take me by surprise. Here, the back would come around, I could just correct it and it would just go where I wanted it to go, just in a slightly sideways fashion. Again, sort of sliding out a bit. I don't think I ever spun this car. Yeah, because it just wasn't difficult to make it go where you wanted it to go. It dealt with the bumps very well. I will say that it lacked maybe outright power to set a good time. It only set a 138.438, so it's quite a bit off. Like a faster cars, and considering it's a two-seater sports car, yeah, I think it just lacked outright powers, which isn't really too surprising considering how many cars had, upwards of 200 horsepower. But yeah, I think that was the only thing holding it back, and it did make me drop a few points just for that. So yeah, in the end it ended up having 40 points for the way that it drove. But there we go. From Trent 445, the Fire Wasp. This car had a time of 134.079. It had some pretty good acceleration, as you can see. Good pull, and it had very good straight line traction. I could just floor it out of most corners. The issue with it was handling. You can see it deals with the bumps alright. Pretty controllable. Yeah, in a straight line it was fine. Braking, it does that. That wasn't me pulling the handbrake or anything. You could see there were no tyre marks or anything. That's just the way the brakes were set up. The rear brakes, I believe, were just massively stronger than the front ones. So you'd brake, and the back would slow down. The front would sort of keep going, but I suppose, had more turn-in grip, and it just sort of would spin on you. It made it very unpredictable. Sort of could be used to my advantage if I was a better driver, but yeah, I don't have the sort of skill or confidence to really be able to use something like that. So it was more of a potluck system for me, really. Just sort of throw it in there and hope you get it in, and if you don't, you understeer wide or spin. Yeah, it did sort of take away my confidence a bit. There, I think I did use a bit of handbrake to because I didn't think I was going to make it. Yeah, it just sort of meant I gave it 20 points in the end for the way that it drove, because it just didn't give me confidence. From Strop, we have the Super Scatenata. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, this was the time attack car. It was ballistic. Yeah, by far and away the fastest car. I think I was going 115 plus miles an hour into the alleyway, and that's why I have to sort of slam on the brakes. But you can just see how controllable it is. I think the only issue I really had with it was locking up just locking up the brakes a bit. But other than that, it wasn't really any issues. I mean, locking it up is sort of my own problem. I can deal with locking up a lot better than some other issues, so I was fine to sort of overlook that a bit. Yeah, in the end it's at a time of 119.828, or I think that's that'd be 9 seconds quicker than the next fastest car we've done so far. There is one more car that went a bit quicker than anything else but this set the fastest time. And I gave it a score of 50 for the way it drove. I thought I was going to hit those rocks when that happened. I'm amazed it had enough grip to miss those. But yeah, you can see I actually sort of went a bit slow on this run. This car has a lot more potential, but I didn't have the confidence to brake as late as it could. Yeah, it was yeah, really impressive, to be honest. From Kulki, the Fadza. Yeah, you might notice, or the first thing you probably noticed, is the blower on the front. Let me just turn the camera around to show it properly. I use bonnet camera, so, well, I couldn't for this car. I ended up using the driver's side bonnet camera, which actually worked out in the end. Wasn't too bad. I might actually switch to it, but yeah, if you sort of notice the way I position the car a bit differently, possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure if I liked using that camera more, but yeah, that was a bit weird, sort of having to switch, because I literally, the only thing you could see was blower on the other one. Just a nice close-up of the supercharger there. It's a nice mod, to be fair, looks good. Yeah, it's otherwise it's a fairly easy to drive car. I think it was sequential. I think. Oh, I'm probably misremembering. That's going to look bad if I remember that wrong. Yeah, no, but it was. Why didn't I put that in my notes? Anyway, yeah, it drove well. Yeah, handled fine. I don't think there was anything really too remarkable, good or bad, but it was more towards the good in the way that it drove. So I gave it a score of 30 for the way it drove, and it's at a time of 1:34.672, which, yeah, pretty decent time. From Le Mans, the Vox Radon Green Motion set a time of 1:40.422, which, yeah, well, wasn't too much of a surprise to me that it was so slow. You can see sort of straight line performance, it's not outstanding from the way that it accelerates, but I think the big thing for me was that the tyres just had absolutely no grip. Going over the bumps is fine, but I think it was getting a fair bit slower than most things. Yeah, it felt like the brakes were overpowering the tyres, and everything was basically. It just struggled to get turned in, really. No, it doesn't help that I clipped the curb there, but yeah, it sort of braking, and sort of the tyres just didn't have enough grip, basically, for what it wanted to do. I found that even accelerating at some point, even though I don't think it was that powerful, it was just sort of spinning up the wheels. You can see that one tyre fire coming out of the turn there, even though no, it's not accelerating that hard or anything. Which, yeah, was a bit weird. I think it's just all down to the tyres. They're being narrow, probably not that good of a compound. Yeah, just made it, I wouldn't say it was hard to drive, just slow. Just slow, and it was easy to overshoot corners, basically, because you'd press on the brakes sort of where you'd expect to have to stop, and it just wouldn't. Or you'd sort of brake too hard and just nothing would happen. But yeah, there we go. From Echo Waffle 8, the K car that isn't a K car, the Satsuma Shrike GT4. Just a bit too long and just a bit too powerful. Anyway, yeah, I promise I won't bring that up again. No, I won't. But yeah, no, it's a K car, 60, well, almost K car, 64 horsepower. That's not enough to go quick here. This ended up being the second slowest car. Still 6 seconds, 5 seconds. I suppose with grinding only 4 seconds. Actually, I'm not sure if the others. Never mind. Right, yeah, we'll call it 6 seconds just to make it easy for me. Yeah, it was just, yeah, lacked power, lacked straight line speed. Otherwise, I mean, it was fine in the way that it drove, but I think that was just to do with it being so slow. you know, if you're not going fast, it's easier to control a car. Well, not sure that's true for all cars. We've had some cars that have said bad times, still being bad. Almost flipped it there, that's fine. 2 wheels, less rolling resistance or something, I don't know. Yeah, if you get the one side closer to the ground like that, it increases the ground effect or something, so you... I don't know. Yeah, anyway, it was just easy to drive, no straight line performance. Gave it a score of 30, and yeah, as I said, 146.766 time. It yeah, just sort of slow, but didn't cause me too many issues, so you know, it has to have a good score, or a decent score at least. And there we go. From the Alt, we have Jason, and as you can see, another time attack car. Crazy downforce, crazy performance, just not as refined as Strop's car. This one, just sort of, it was quite soft. You can see the way that it pitches and bounces about. I'm amazed I survived that, to be honest, because I messed up going into the alley. And you can see it get launched about there. Just sort of nowhere near as refined, just sort of set up soft, raised suspension, and it does that. It made it a bit more awkward, but the fact that it had so much performance, such good brakes, meant that I could afford to make mistakes with it and still get it turned in, still make it set a quick time, and just have no issues at all. Again, I think this car has a lot more potential in it, like Strop's car. It set a time of 124.891, which was that 5 seconds slower than Strop's car. And yeah, I don't think it would have gone quicker, but possibly there's a bit more time to be had. But anyway, yeah, you can see the amount of body roll as well. Just sort of maybe even a bit too soft. Maybe just raising up the ride height would have done a bit better. But yeah, and I gave it a score of 30 for the way it drove. But yeah, there we go. So that's everything now, and yeah, that's all the times. So we have our winners, I suppose. So in first place, Goblin 95 with 263 points, and right behind them, Yang X2 with 262 points. 1 point between the winners, which is pretty good. And then third place, Zephie with 256. The points throughout, to be fair, were quite close, with tie for just like sort of looking through for I've got a list of positions now, but yeah, there's all the points, just everyone sort of quite close together, which yeah, I'm quite out with the scoring system. I'm going to change it for next time, make it a bit quicker and easier for me. Hopefully I'll be able to get these videos out a bit quicker. I've got like a nice system where I can just plug numbers into and then get a score out of it, but it might take some time to get used to, so I'm not sure about that. But yeah, challenges will keep going and hopefully will come a bit quicker. I've got a test driver and things coming to, yeah, again, save me time and things. But yeah, thank you for all that entered. Yeah, it was quite fun seeing the variety of city cars here, pushing the boundaries of what really is a city car, really. I mean, look at this, look at that wall, and the exhaust pipe. But yeah, no, it was fun, and yeah, thank you for entering. 49 entries is sort of unbelievable, but there we go. And yeah, see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this. And yeah, until next time, goodbye.